She's great.
Unless you sat down through the whole thing, then hopefully you I'm worse. Hopefully that makes you realise that you're here amongst friends. So I'm just going to introduce you to our, morning keynote speakers who give us the conference. Kate Miller. So Kate O'Brien, she's the project lead for equality and diversity Outbound. Her research into diversity and equity is widely quoted in both academic papers and in the national press. She's all over the Guardian. She's the expedition coordinator for the Adventure Syndicate, and she leads the Overnight on a School Night programme introducing teenage girls to bikepacking. Kate is also a level 3 mountain bike leader, and she's absolutely rad on a bike. Rehna Yaseen, here, has been all over our screens for the past 2 years. She's been on Country File. She's been in every podcast, magazines, and she also hosts the Women in Adventure session at Kendal Mountain Festival. It may seem like she's burst into the public eye in the last couple of years, but I always say that it takes a long time to make an overnight success. Rehna is the Youth and Community Project Lead for Lindley Educational Trust. She's worked there for the past 8 years, where she works on urban youth projects, particularly working within the South Asian community in Greater Manchester and Sheffield. She's spoken eloquently and forcefully about the cultural differences that affect people's experiences in the outdoors, and we're really delighted to have her here this weekend.
What amazing introduction so far, and what absolute honour to stand in this room full of such incredible women. It's really amazing to be here. We thought we would start by inviting you to get to know each other a little bit more, as you've heard a lot from us at the front. So I'll just invite you for a couple of minutes. Just turn to 2 people next to you who you've not met yet. And find out what are they excited about this weekend and what brought them to the conference. So just a couple of minutes. 2 Can I just have a couple of people just to introduce somebody that they met there, and just say what inspired them to come to the event this weekend?
Ali and I were discussing how when you go to different conferences, you were saying about DAB, like there's just usually like a lot of the male of the species around. We were saying, it's nice to come to a conference where you kind of, for once, you don't feel like the minority in the room.
Really unusual experience. Brilliant, thank you. One for over this side.
Amy said she.
Hi, Amy.
Amy said she had like this phrase of like a rising tide lifts everybody up.
Nice. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. And one more. Or someone over here. Go for it.
At Ellie's university, she's working out what she wants to do next, so there's some perfect options for her to network and meet people and understand what she wants to do.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Range of reasons, range of people, range of experience in the room. Not often we get to network with this number of women, so fantastic. Brenin and I are going to spend the next hour, just over an hour, introducing ourselves, saying a bit about our journey in the outdoors, and then we're going to talk about our roles within Lindley Educational Trust and my role working with women in leadership with Outdoor. So I'll hand you over to Rehna to introduce.
Thanks very much. Okay, hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. You can really feel female energy, can't you? Like vibrating. Okay, quick exercise then. Hands up if you like the outdoors. Awesome. Hands up if you do regular exercise. Hands up if you go on walks or go climbing. Hands up if people from your community go into the outdoors. Okay? Hands up if you think role models are important. Hands up if you've ever been told you can't do something. Okay. So all of them that you guys all put your hands up to, when I was younger, I could never put my hand up to any of them. So I'm Rehna Yaseen. Oh, sorry, I'm feeling emotional. Okay, Rehna Yaseen, 29-year-old British Pakistani, born and raised in Ashton Line on the east side of Greater Manchester. So, I think this next slide is really important in my whole journey, and that of, can anyone spot me? Okay, so, one of 6 siblings, generally, South Asians, we do have big families, and not only that, is the extended family is huge in our personal lives. So we all live together, we have multi-generational households, we eat together, people have their grandparents living in their houses, and we're generally very, very close-knit, and I think that's really important, and that's really important to remember. So growing up, and I do apologise for people that have heard me, like Rachel said, I have been on quite a few podcasts and I have told this story quite a few times, so if you already know it, I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself to you again. But growing up, I didn't know what the great outdoors meant, and I didn't know people went hill walking, I didn't know people went climbing, I just didn't know that whole world existed, and that's not far from the norm of women like me. So my version of the outdoors was playing outside. We played on our scooters, we played on our bikes, and we played on them until the street lamps came on. And when the street lamps came on, it was time to get in because it was dinner time, and I'm not going to say the next line because child protection and everything. I'd get in trouble if he didn't make it inside when the street lamps came on. Okay, so that was our version of the outdoors, playing out with my siblings and my cousins. It's not part of our norm to go hill walking or climbing. But do you know what? That line, I've said that quite a few times, right? But I'm thinking, actually, it is. Because people go from all around the world to Pakistan to climb some of the best mountains in the world. I'm like, what? Like, it's been a revelation to me recently. I think, I don't even know if I'm, yeah. Okay, so, my exposure to the outdoors. When I was a teenager, believe it or not, a bit mouthy, had a bit of a gob on me, didn't really know what I wanted from life or which direction I wanted to take, and I didn't really have much better to do, to be honest. So I had some friends, I lived in the white side of Ashton, I had some friends that lived on the Asian side of Ashton, yes, that still exists, and I had some friends in the St. Peter's ward of Ashton, and they said to me, Rehna, why don't you just come to the youth club? And I was like, that is so bored, like who goes to youth club? Like, no, that's not for me. And then they're like, well, you've got nothing better to do, just come and see how it goes, see what you think. So I thought, actually, do you know what, I've got nothing better to do, let's do it. And I remember getting to this youth club and I was just in awe, like, wow, projects exist like this? And it was a 7-night-a-week youth provision with all the mainstream stuff, the sports, the youth, the general youth club drop-in sessions, etc, etc. And then the thing that really got me was the outdoors. Oh my gosh, they went on weekly climbing clubs to Manchester Climbing Centre, they did camping trips. My first ever camping trip was with youth club, and I remember North Wales, right under Trivan, and I remember, and I think till this day it's probably my favourite mountain, and I think that is just because I go back to my first ever experience of hill walking and climbing. And so yeah, then, am I going over 5 minutes, Kate? I think no, you're So, an opportunity came about to go to Morocco and climb Mount Toubkal. For those of you that don't know, which I'm pretty sure you all do know, it's the highest Atlas mountain at 4,167 metres high. And I remember, like, the opportunity, and we were all like, what? To go to Morocco? Like, there's mountains in Morocco, what, like? A bunch of teenagers that haven't really been out and explored the world, and just the prospect of teenagers from Ashton going to Morocco, climbing the Atlas Mountains, it was just very, very exciting. So we were like, yeah, we want to do this, we're well up for it, let's do it. Obviously, if you're going to climb a high mountain, you have to be physically fit, right? Or at least a little bit. Anyway, that takes me to my first ever hill walk. Again, apologies to those that have heard this before, but I can tell you that my first ever hill walk was absolutely dreadful. I hated it. My boots didn't fit me. I couldn't tell if I was hot, if I was cold, but putting all the layers on, taking all the layers off, did that the whole time. My boots didn't fit me, I got blistered. I swore at my youth worker the whole way up, believe it or not. And then we got to the top of it. Oh, by the way, for context, Dove Stones. Everyone's heard of Dove Stones, right? Yeah. We take primary school to Dovestone all the time. It's that little hill, just a little hill. Anyway, we got to the top of Dovestone. My walking boots came off, straight in Adnan's direction. Poor guy. He was my youth worker at the time. I was just like, I'm not coming to Morocco. I'm not coming to youth club ever again. Pakistanis aren't made to climb mountains. That's why I can't see no one that looks like me here. Even though obviously all me and my mates were all like So anyway, and he was like, reverse psychology. Listen, Rehna, if you don't want to come to Morocco, I completely understand. If you don't want to come to youth club again, completely understand. Put your boots back on, let's get off this hill. I was like, yeah, you aren't going to see me again. Marched off this hill as fast as I could. But do you know what? I had the best night's sleep ever, right? And that's because I've never done as much exercise in my life. Wow, exercise is good. Anyway, so I remember ringing Adnan the next day and I was like, okay, where are we going next? And he just laughed. He goes, I knew you were going to ring me back. And I was like, the only way I can explain it is something clicked in my head and my heart. Maybe it was, type 2 fun as we like to describe it or what, but anyway, I've been hooked ever since. So we went to Morocco. Just probably the best experience that I ever had. You can see how inexperienced Adidas joggers. Why did no one tell me to get my walking trousers on? Oh goodness. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, went to Morocco, best experience of my life. I could not believe I went there. We came back from Morocco and the funding had cut for the youth provision, which meant everything that they'd built up in that area of Ashton-under-Lyne had just been destroyed in the matter of weeks, and there was a massive correlation between antisocial behaviour, hate crime, drugs, substance misuse, all that kind of stuff that you see in urban environments. And that's when Linda stepped in and said, right, we're going to pilot up a youth project and we'll see how it goes. So it started as a one-night youth provision, which I volunteered for, then a 2-day and a 3-day, which I also volunteered for. Me, Akib and Naya, we were the first to volunteer on this project, and we were like, do you know what? We know how much Youth Project did for us, personally, professionally, everything, and all of that. So we were like, I'm going to volunteer. Anyway, fast forward, 10 years from when all that started, I now manage the Youth Project. So I'm project manager of the Youth and Community Project, where we essentially use the outdoors as our main tool of engagement with young people in the wider community. And I'm going to talk to you a bit more about that in a bit.
I've had the privilege of working with Brenin a bit through my work, Brenna's work at Lindley and my work at Outward Bound, and I think often in the outdoors not only do we not meet many other women, but we definitely don't meet other women with a range of different backgrounds. So for me, hearing your story has been really interesting and insightful. There's definitely some similarities, which you might see as I tell mine, and there's some really big differences as well. So this is little Kate. My parents moved to the Highlands of Scotland before I was born. My dad grew up in Manchester, my mum grew up in Leicester, and they both had a love of the outdoors, so they decided to move up to Brenin. So I was born, my house was just behind this beautiful woodland, so a lot of my childhood was being a bit feral in these woods and climbing trees and falling out of trees. They also moved for the mountains, so this was my first bivvy when I was about 9 or 10 years old on the summit of Melbuckle. So really adventurous parents. I also absolutely loved my bike. My mum, now I talk a bit to my mum about gender, and she said it was really in her mind, she didn't want me and my brother to ever be limited by our gender. So for me, being outdoorsy and adventurous and climbing was very much encouraged. For my brother, kind of emotional expression and creativity was very much encouraged. And I ended up playing ice hockey as a young person. My brother ended up doing figure skating, which we both loved until we got to our teenage years, when we realised it was really not socially acceptable. And if we ever wanted to fit in, then we probably could stop doing those things, which is such a shame, isn't it? Anyway, my teenage years, so some similarities here. I spent a lot of time outdoors, but a lot of that was drinking in parks, or camping, a lot of exercise with running from the police and so you get doing that? Maybe that's my dad's side that brought that in. Yeah, so when I was at school, I would have been described as someone who had quite challenging behaviour. I was on behaviour timetables a lot. I was on detention a lot of the time. I often just felt like trouble, like I was a bit of a problem. And I also, there was a big clash for me with being outdoorsy, my love of the outdoors and femininity. And I had a big group of female friends, none of whom were into the outdoors, and their favourite thing was to dress Kate up. Dress Kate, let's give Kate a makeover. So there was this real tension for me. But one of the big change moments, the picture on the right is me with my peroxide blonde hair, at a course for individuals with an outdoor centre when I was about 13 or 14. And I remember just for the first time like feeling really confident and accepted for who I was, and it was amazing and powerful, and the first time I got sent home and asked not to come back because I was still quite challenging in those environments, but I felt like it was so important. I wrote my letter and said, look, please can I come on your courses next year, and then I went on the courses every year for like 4 or 5 years, and that for me was like a really positive spiral, I suppose, of my development and my interest in leading in the outdoors. And you can see the male instructors there. There was no female instructors, but there was one female trainee, and I remember speaking to her, and it was the first spark of like, maybe this is something I could do with my life. Like, wouldn't that be cool? And the guy in the picture there's Matt, and I remember being on a canoeing expedition on Loch Shiel and chatting to him like, how do you get to do what you do? He'd been in the army and told me all these experiences, none of which resonated with me. But the one thing he said was, go and do your Duke of Edinburgh. And so when I went back to school, I would never, that was not my peer group at all, like I would never have done that. But I joined the Duke of Edinburgh, and that opened up lots of possibilities for me to think about that as a career, which is super important. Picture at the top is me climbing with my dad, and then my relationship with my parents was pretty strained when I was a teenager, but going on this course, I was like, oh, the outdoors is stuff your mum and dad do, like total rejection of that. But going on this course, I was like, oh, actually climbing is quite cool, and so my dad would take me climbing, which was really good for our relationship. Fast forward a wee bit, and I went to uni. So I ended up going to the University of Strathclyde to do their outdoor course there, and did a placement at a water sports centre, and that was like my first job in the outdoors. And I remember being like one trainee, it was all male trainees, and the first thing we were tasked to do was like morning jobs, and I would be tasked with cleaning the toilets, so all the blokes went and brought the power boats in, did all the technical jobs, and at that point I just thought, oh, that's okay, this is just what I do. I didn't realise the messages I was absorbing about who I was and my role in the outdoors. Thankfully I ended up at Organised in Australia, so that's the top picture on the left there, and I did like a voluntary thing for a few months there, and that was the first time like going on big wilderness journeys. I was so out of my depth. I was like, just completely in awe of the instructors, and they did some amazing like personal development combined with this wilderness adventure that was so inspiring. So I came back, and that was the beginning of my outdoor qualifications. And I realised that if I wanted to work in this sector, I would need to get like my ML and my rock climbing instructor. And, they seemed like really, really far away. But that was kind of the beginning of that journey. I worked at a centre, a few different activity centres where there was a really good gender balance. And I think I didn't, like a lot of the time through this journey, I didn't really think about gender much or what it meant that I was female and often surrounded by men. But I think these years were fantastic, so there was really good gender balance. A lot of the courses were provided as part of your work, so I was just in this environment where it was quite naturally 50-50, doing ML training, doing single picture board, that sort of thing. I was always fascinated by like potential and what's that mean. Like when people kept saying to me when I was a teenager, you're not really fulfilling your potential. I was like, oh, what's that even mean? So I've always been fascinated by that kind of personal development side, and I went to uni to do a master's in positive psychology after starting at Outward Bound to kind of understand more about myself, but also how to work with other people and get the best out of people. So that's always been my passion through my work at OB. I was a trainee at Outward Bound also to start with, and then I progressed through kind of being a trainee instructor and senior instructor, and then left Outward Bound to do some wilderness therapy work before taking on this job, project managing with instructor diversity. And so now, Rachel mentioned in the intro, I run the Women's Outdoor Leadership course at Rebound as part of the Equity Diversity Strategy. I also do some work with the Adventure Syndicate, working with teenage girls, and I quite enjoy writing about these things and sharing the learning from them. And I guess what I tried to do in reflecting on my journey was think about the role of gender within it, because I think if you'd asked me when I was in my late 20s, like, has being a woman impacted your career? I would have been like, not really, I don't think so. But actually, now I work in this area and I've reflected a lot more. There's definitely a lot of moments where I think, oh yeah, that's quite interesting. Maybe that's why I had so much self-doubt. Oh yeah, that's quite interesting. Maybe that's why I wasn't willing to put myself forward for that thing. Something, I guess, that'll be a bit of a theme throughout this weekend. I think now we're going to move on to
part of the discussion. So, what's interesting, like Kate was saying, about having female role models in the outdoors, and in my journey, I didn't actually have a female role model in the outdoors. My role model was Afnan, who was my youth worker, and he was a man. So he was one was like Brenin, these are mountains, this is a crag, you know, and kind of introduced me to all that kind of stuff. But I'd like to invite you guys, the person next to you or the person behind you, I'd like you to have a quick discussion about what your introduction to adventurous activities, did we say? To adventurous activities, and has gender played a role in that? Thank you. There are long breaks, like Rachel mentioned, so do feel free to carry these conversations on later on. Is it okay if we can share a few stories? Please. Maybe like 2? Go all night. Come on. Anyone wanna? Yeah, go on.
We just found that, like, us two got our ML from North Wales and we were speaking to these ladies from Ireland who were saying that they've never met so many women with their mountain leader qualification until they walked into this room, because in Ireland there are so few, and it's really striking the difference in access to pathways, even just between Wales and Ireland, that none of us have realised until we spoke about it.
It's really interesting. I think, who was it yesterday that was saying they run a rock course? Rock, is that the name? No, what's the name of the course? The festival?
Women's Rock Festival.
Women's Rock Festival, and he was saying the same about the female rocking big climbing instructors as well,
Yes,
wasn't
the
he?
majority of the SCIs, we have like 4 female SCIs in Ireland, and we could only get 1 because everyone else was busy, so we had to get 6.
It's 6 from the UK and only 1 from Ireland. There's currently 2 NCI trainees and only 4 qualified female.
And even for like the RCBI course, there's only 1 training course done within Ireland, and that was this May, and I was part of it. There was another girl, and that was the first training course we did on the island of Ireland, which was insane. And it was actually done in Northern Ireland, if you want to. So we don't even know when the first assessment is going to be for the RCBI.
Keep waiting. Go on, Emily.
We are both grew up in very different environments. I'm from inner city Birmingham, and Jen is from rural Cornwall/Devon, and both grew up very differently, but both went to the outdoors properly by DD. So yeah, it's a nice little.
Can we have your name as well, please?
Oh yeah, I'm Jo. Just conversing to that, I did DME. I grew up in Yorkshire Dales and was always outside. Spent many years in my teenage years on bells and horses. And I did my DME and I was put off walking for about 10 years. Really? Oh, wow. By a man, by the way. Oh. Because of the little power trip thing. So that was a complete opposite experience. And I was really keen.
You were?
I was really keen before that.
Oh, how interesting. On the flip side.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Go on, Ella.
So just quickly, so not so much about introduction, but we were just chatting about how maybe when we were younger, there being less like women's specific clothing was like quite off-putting, and I was saying that like you know, seeing people just walking around in these like big, vacuum pockets, like outdoorsy stuff all the time, and being like, yeah, but I still want to feel feminine, and I still want to look like me and make style choices, but still be practical. And so in more recent years, obviously there's a lot more women's clothing, women's specific cuts, trousers that aren't too tight on the thighs and too big on the waist, t-shirts that aren't just like big boxy things, and like colours and all of those sorts of things that make you feel, you know, we all know if you're comfortable in the outdoors, then you're more confident and you enjoy it more, right? So if you're wearing the right clothes, you know, the technical clothes or whatever, then you will be more comfortable, but actually wanting to buy those and wear those because you feel good in them, and especially for introducing people, young girls, you know, fashion, style, whatever, image is so important. Totally. So all of those brands. Then all of those brands that are doing women specific cuts, colours, styles, and are moving away from just like the I look like an outdoorsy sort of person that
personality trait guy. I believe. Right, well, thank you very much for that. That was really, really insightful, and we are trying our best to make it as engaging as possible and get people to talk as much as possible and get to know each other as well. So that was great.
Yeah, wow.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Rehna. So we're going to just contextualise a little bit with some research and statistics. So we know that fewer women get recommended 150 minutes of exercise a week than men, and this Girl Can campaign has been huge in raising awareness around that. We also know there's a drop-off with when it comes to being a teenage girl. Mountain Training have been fantastic at now collecting data, and I'm sure a lot of people will come across the Your Movement Matters survey. So this data is from Your Movement Matters, and I'm just going to share a little bit briefly, because obviously there's a lot going on there. And if you want to look in more detail, all that information is just over on the boards here. So at the breaks you can access it. Thanks to Nicola, who unfortunately couldn't be here but has been crunching all the stats behind the scenes, I think. So basically what this is telling us is that with the walking pathway and anything walking related, the bars in purple are participation and the ones in orange are leadership. So for example, with the mountain leader, 42% of the Your Movement Matter survey respondents who do mountain walking are female, yet only 25% hold mountain leader qualifications. So we're now able to see the disparity between numbers of women participating, that enthusiasm to be in the outdoors, and the leadership pathway. Similar with climbing, so again in blue we've got participation in a range of different climbing activities, and in orange we've got leadership within those climbing activities. So again you can see like the participation rates for women is increasing quite a lot, increasing from what it was, and there's close to 50% along at this end for some of the climbing activities, but the leadership pathways are still not representative of that. There's research into why that might be, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of chat about this throughout the weekend, and tomorrow when we do the Challenging Sexism panel, I know there's some questions in there that touch on this. Sport England did some really interesting research into getting active in the outdoors, and they identified some general barriers, which I'm not going to go into loads of detail about, but the ones they pulled out that were specific to gender. So the first one, girls are not welcome in outdoor spaces. The spaces designed for children and young people are often considered to be boys' spaces, and girls feel like they should stay outside of the boys' areas. So that's something that came out of a 2018 study. And then I guess the two things potentially are connected. 80% of parents state that their children get less exercise today because parents are afraid to let them go outside, but that's particularly strong for parents with daughters. And there's lots of research now showing the impact of that parenting and the kind of early childhood experiences that can impact us, particularly as women, in terms of how whether we feel the outdoors is for us, and also how risk averse we might or might not be. And you might have shared some experiences there as you were meeting someone in the room as to their experiences growing up. And what I find quite fascinating is a lot of the women I've worked with through the women's development work, women who are experiencing lower confidence, self-doubt, fear of failure, often can identify like some really early experiences or key people in their lives that reinforce those societal stereotypes of women being lesser than, or women being weaker, or girls shouldn't take risks, that kind of thing. So that's quite a bigger picture societal challenge with some of this stuff. One other thing on that. The other area that went into was looking at other populations, so looking at Black, Asian, minority, ethnic communities, and looking at people with disabilities, and identifying particular barriers for those groups as well. And this, I thought this was better representation, which is from a separate piece of research that was done by the Inclusivity in the Outdoors Research Group, which I was part of throughout the round. And we looked at lots of different inequalities within the outdoors through a webinar series, and we had a researcher analysing some of the findings. And one of the key findings from that piece of research was that there's big intersections between all of the different inequalities that we face. So we can't take ourselves as women in isolation. Actually, we all have unique identities which are made up of lots of different things, including race, including whether we're part of the LGBTQ community, disability, our socioeconomic status, and perceptions and understanding in the middle was viewed as the biggest barrier. So actually understanding a range of women's experiences in terms of participation and improving things within mountain training, super important. And it's back to you. Wow. So Rehna's going to share a bit now about participation and work in Lindley and work in the
Yeah.
I'll give you that to you.
It helps having a clip.
It does, doesn't it?
Okay, so yeah. So like I said before, so fast forward 10 years, I'm the project lead of youth provision, youth and community project in National Line. And so the youth project, when I came into this position 5 years ago, was a 3-night-a-week provision, and we worked with 13 to 18-year-olds. So now we've managed to take it to a 7-night-a-week youth provision, and we work with 8 to 25-year-olds. And the the higher age actually is our women's only stuff. So we realised we're really fortunate. We put in a funding bid with the big lottery, and we were successful for our women and girls work. And I said, I need to work with older girls as well, because in our community, what happens is, and yes, I'm generalising here because it's not the same for every South Asian, and I am mainly talking about South Asian females because that's that's my lived experience, and so that's what I'm going to talk about. Generally, when you're 18, life changes for you, and it's like, well, here's what you can do, here's what you should be doing now, is you need to start thinking about your family, your work, the things that are really dictated to you by the elders, okay? Not your well-being, not, oh, I know, let me just go hill walking on the weekend. That's just not part of what society as a South Asian woman dictates to you, basically. So I was like, it's really important that we work with 13 to 25-year-olds. And that's going really, really well. We have, a 7-night-a-week youth provision. So we have a Monday night youth club drop-in session, and that's a session for young people that are generally involved in antisocial behaviour. So young people, mainly South Asian boys, who are involved in drugs and crime, antisocial behaviour, drugs, substance misuse, that kind of stuff like I mentioned before. And that's an amazing session. Can you imagine having like political debates with some of these lads that have just come in high? That's the kind of context. Tuesday we have a cricket session. Wednesday is our outdoor pursuit session, so that's a session which we do DV. Brat DV people. Yeah, like I didn't do DV because I wasn't able to access that when I was a teenager. First, we weren't able to afford DV. We weren't able, and again, didn't see many people like me when I was a teenager doing DV. So I went to the manager of Manchester DV and I said, what are you going to do about the lack of representation within South Asian young people and Duke of Edinburgh? He goes, here's 20 grand, make it happen. I said, yes sir. Now we run bronze with our women's only group, and we do gold with our Young Leaders project, which is amazing. We're on our second year of Duke of Edinburgh. Now we give it away. Now we're doing gold DV. Yeah, okay, so that's our Wednesday outdoor pursuit session, so we do DV. We have a Young Leaders project, which I'll go into more detail. That's in partnership with our Bound UK. So that is essentially about creating diverse young leaders within the outdoors, okay? young leaders, young people are our future, right? And if we're not going around the whole cycle of upskilling and getting qualified young people, then we're just going to be in the same situation in 20 years' time, are we not? Yes, we are. So, a Friday night football session, which is amazing. Again, it can be hailstoning and raining outside, and we can still have 80 young people there on a Friday night playing football, and it's one of our most popular sessions. And then we decided during lockdown, I was like, just going out for my stroll, thinking, why are there so many young children out in the streets, you know, on the weekend? And then we started our fast club. We restarted that. Traditionally, that used to happen in the local area, but it got stopped again when austerity hit and the funding stopped. So Lindley's decided we're going to put on a provision for 8 to 12-year-olds, which is run by Uncle Ali, Nima's dad. He's everyone's uncle, so if you ever see him in Ashton, make sure you call him Uncle Ali. So that's our whole age range is 8 to 25, and it's pretty amazing stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Young Leaders Project. And the Young Leaders Project, so Kay came to us, I remember that
Many years ago.
to Holy Trinity in Ashton, and I was actually doing some interviews for a football session. Well, for the football session we needed more youth workers and more football coaches. So I was like, 1 minute Kate, so tell me why you want to work in Ashton. Yeah, the Young Leaders Project sounds amazing. So I was just like one night, just like going back and forth. But it was amazing. So Outward Bound, they came up with the idea. Kate can give you all the academic, or she can give you all that intel in a bit. But she just came and said, we want to do this project, what do you think? So I sat down with Kate and we're looking at all the objectives, the aims of this project. Is it in line with my community? Does it fit the needs of my community? Do our young people in Ashton want to become young leaders? Do they want to gain experience and qualifications in the outdoors? Is that something they actually want? Because that's what's really important. Like we say, oh, we need to get more brown and black people in the outdoors. But is that what that community wants? Yeah, and I'm just generalising again because I'm talking about brown people. But that can go for every subgroup, can't it? The sexuality and gender, disability, women in leadership. You can look at that in every subgroup and say the same questions. We say, oh yeah, we need this, we need that, we need this, we need that, but is that what they want? That's really important. So sorry, I've gone off on a tangent.
Anyway, I'll just say one thing there, because I was having this meeting, we met for the first time, and I was like, who is this? Like, you were so challenging and it was so helpful. And that's what I love
that I'll be a teenager, I love the years, and you know what, you've got to embrace it, right? So, the Young Leaders Project, so that's what we started it, how many years ago now? 4 years, I think. And we piloted it, and so we had, I decided that I wanted to do 50-50 in terms of participation, so I wanted 3 young lads and I wanted 3 young girls. And it was in partnership with Lindley Educational Trust, the Outward Bound Trust, the North Face, and an outdoor centre in London called Shadwell Basin. So Shadwell and Lindley were bringing 6 young people together, each from their organisations, and the whole year was around creating diverse young leaders within the outdoors. So that doesn't just include the outdoor bit. There was so much more to it than that. So it's got the volunteering, so our young people ended up volunteering on our sessions. Shadowing, going back to it, they did a week leadership course at Outward Bound Ullswater. They do shadowing, they work in local schools, they go back to Outward Bound and work with other outdoor instructors, and that's what the whole year looked like essentially. At the end of that year, do more volunteering on our sessions, working at our outdoor centre in Peak District, etc, and then we had gotten on the books. So now we've got these young people who are now working on our sessions, running the football session, or coming along to a climbing session and putting the harnesses on the younger children, helping them, showing them how to belay and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like going full circle, if you like. So yeah, we piloted that last year and that was really amazing. Obviously, 3 years ago even, COVID kind of got in the way and changed it up a bit, but we did it again. And these amazing young women, Naima here, Armin and Uzma. And let me just tell you a little bit now. So Uzma, she was the first cohort of young people. She has now got a place at university. She's now working full-time as a pharmacist. while she's at uni, and she's gone on to do some pretty amazing stuff. Amina, she's training to be a paramedic, and Naima here, we just employed her for a year, so she's working with me. So yeah, this is a picture of us in London. So this was at the end of their celebration. We went to London's Shadwell Basin, and we had all 4 cohorts of young people this time. So we had young people from Coventry, young people from Manchester, young people from Sheffield, and young people from London, all there with their outward bound instructors, with Kate, with myself. And we had a guest speaker, so we had a lady called Preet Chandy who came. I think a few people might have heard of her.
Yeah, Paula Preet.
Paula Preet. Yeah, proper legend.
Tell them what she did.
Paula Preet Chandy, she's the first South Asian woman to go to the North Pole solo. Yeah, solo. Carrying everything on a sledge pull. That's what carrying everything with her. She put her niece's name, she engraved her niece's name on her pole, just so her niece could be with her. And this is what I mean about role models, right? So female role models within the outdoors, that is massive. I didn't have that. And well, I did to an extent. So I had Adnan, but of course he's male. I wonder what it would have been like if he was female. I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is it's so important because, like I said before, in our culture, it's almost like it's predestined for us of where we're going to end up. You're going to end up, sorry I'm generalising, I don't want to have to say this out in public, but it is, sometimes it is like you're going to be a housewife, or you're going to grow up, you're going to get married, you'll have an arranged marriage, which is not the same as forced marriage, let me just put that out there. You're going to have an arranged marriage, you're going to have children, and you're going to live a very good life, being a good daughter-in-law and a good wife, and no siree. You can still be a good daughter-in-law, still be a good mum, still be whatever the hell you want, but also do all these things that are out of the norm and out of what society dictates to us, right? So when Lindley offered me this full-time position, I was working in a school doing behaviour management with naughty kids, believe it or not. Come on, let's go outside, I decided I wanted to become a forest school practitioner to get those naughty kids outside, and they were completely different. And that's when it clicked to me, I was like, got brain surgery. So then I went and became a forest school leader, and I was taking the young people out with me every day, and then we started doing forest school with reception all the way to year 6, and that was my full-time job then at that point. Then Lindsay offered me this job, and they said, Rehna, do you want to become project manager? And I was like, I think so, it seems amazing, why not? So my mum and dad are divorced, which I think is part of the reason why I am the way I am, as in not wacky and cuckoo, but maybe that's part of it. But what I mean is that my mum, she was like, I need to break free from this so that my daughters don't go through what I did. And that is the same for so many South Asian women. And my dad, so I went to my dad's house, said, Dad, Lindsay have offered me this full-time job, and I'm really interested. And he goes, well, are you going to make more money? And I said, yeah. And he's like, go take it, I'm so proud of you. Yeah, this is great. And you know what? And I don't blame them for thinking like that, because they didn't come from Pakistan so their daughter can go climbing. They came from Pakistan so his daughter can have a better life and get a good education. You know, all that I like it. But am I going off on a tangent and not actually talking about girls in adventure? I don't know.
That's definitely not a tangent.
I don't know, is there another slide? Yeah, okay, so a few years ago, before COVID hit, I went to this conference and I was sat on the table with, they call the Rank Foundation, and we've had a really long-term partnership with them, a great relationship, and we're at Naima is actually employed, so Rank Foundation give us some funding to employ a young person for a year. So that's who. So it was that conference, it was there a few years ago, and lo and behold, believe it or not, I was sat on the same table as the CEO of the Rank Foundation. I thought, yeah, it's my opportunity. So he was like, Rehna, we were just having dinner, and then the conversation went on, and he was like, there's one thing you could do, what would it be? And I thought, oh, what do you mean? He goes, you know, for people in your community. And I thought, oh, I'm going to think big, I'm going to think radical, what can we do? And I said, oh, I'd love to take some women to Nepal from my background, from diverse backgrounds. I'd love to take some women to Nepal and go up base camp, Everest base camp. And he was like, great, put funding bid in and we'll make it happen. I was like, Okay, so anyway, the next morning, everyone's like, Rehna, are you going to base camp? Rehna, are you going to base camp? I was like, I don't know, am I going to base camp? Like, it was just literally a conversation. Anyway, we put a funding bid in, and we got 20 grand to take 8 women into Nepal from diverse backgrounds, live in Ashton, and go to every space camp. Like, it's just mad. Like, these women, just like 18 plus, but women that would never, ever, ever dream of doing something like this. I would not have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to afford to just get on a plane and go to Nepal and do 3 weeks of trekking and go to the base camp of the highest mountain in the world. Do you know what I mean? That's just not something that we do. But we do actually, we're changing the narrative of that. So we got this funding, and then obviously COVID happened and we weren't able to make it happen, unfortunately. And we just decided that given that they're a bit further behind on the vaccinations and it's a developing country, it might not be the best place to take, I mean, they're all adults, but other people are adults. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Given the cultural barriers and all that, and it's still quite different. They might be 18 plus, but until they're not married, they're still their parents' responsibility. And that's, again, a generalisation, but it is the way it generally is. But obviously, once Rehna's got an idea in her head, she can't let it go. So I said to my boss, please can I go? Please. And then I went to Sprayway, and Sprayway are an amazing outdoor brand who are so into grassroots organisations. They're literally the next town from Ashton as well. So we've had like a 5-year relationship with them, and they give us waterproofs, and they give us basically all the outdoor gear you can think of. So we take young people winter mountaineering in February, and I say we might come from a deprived area, but we proper kitted out with all our gear, and we look like we mean business. So anyway, I went to Sprayway and I said, I really want to do this thing, can you help me? They gave me some funding, and off I went. Okay, so these are some pictures. So I did a bit of an extended version, so I did 3 weeks in Nepal. So I went to Gokyo Ri, the Jola Pass, up to Galapather, and then to base camp, and then back down. So that was me. It was pretty good. Back to the women. So we decided, because we're not going to go to Nepal. Like, what else can we do? We're racking our brains and thinking, we want to still look at all the objectives in the aim. We still want to get women out into the outdoors. We still want to build confidence and resilience. We still want to give them an experience that's so far out from the norms of society and what's dictated to you as a South Asian woman, as I keep going on about. What can we do? What can we do? Then we thought, well, why don't we do something a bit different? Why don't we go paddling instead and go canoeing? So we decided we're going to go paddling in Finland. And obviously we needed a bit more experience. We needed to make sure that the women had a good training plan in place. And we don't, so with our project, we tend to do more on-land type of things. So we tend to go walking more or climbing. And so canoeing and on the water, I got to say we were all pretty nervous. But we did a lot of training. We did a training day a week. We did a weekend in somewhere, Leicester, at an outdoor centre in Leicester. And we took into consideration all the festivals. So we took into consideration Eid. We took into consideration Ramadan. We took into consideration people's families, commitments, and all of these things that you don't think matter. We took into consideration the food that we were going to take at the camping trip and all this kind of stuff. And then went to Finland. So these are just a few pictures from Finland. And it was pretty amazing stuff. So we had 9 young women, 2 female paddling instructors, and we did a week in Finland along the tar route, and it was pretty amazing. So wilderness type, like, you know, pooing in a bush and all that. I'm joking, that's not how you poo in the outdoors. So yeah, making open fires. Yeah, please don't show that bit. I'm not advocating pooing like that outside. So making open fires, cooking on open fires. Obviously halal meat, that wasn't an option out there. So and that's also things that you need to take into consideration. So telling women you're going to have a meat-free 2 weeks or whatever it is because we can't get the halal food, so we've got the vegetarian and everything. So making wildfires and cooking on the fires and putting up your tents, all these things that women have never done. People have never camped more than one night. So camping for a whole week. And I always think that, you know, that it's been a successful wilderness trip when everyone was getting excited at seeing the compost toilet. So we got to the campsites and they were like, yay, toilet like dance. So I like the proper toilet to have a sparkle. Anyway, so yeah, here we go. So yeah, that's me done, thank you.
Well, it's been super inspiring so far. Rehna's invited us all, Rachel's invited us all to come in our pants tomorrow to go swimming, and Rehna's invited us all to shit in a bush. But no, seriously, thanks Rehna, that was amazing. And really inspiring, like seeing your journey and how you're now like taking so much action for people like you. It's amazing. So we've got time for a couple of questions. If anyone wants to ask Rehna specifically anything about anything that she talked about, yeah, come back.
If you know what, I won't be offended, we can talk later.
And then I'm going to share a bit about the women's course and I'll get a chance to ask about that. So maybe just time for 2 questions if people have any. Yeah, at the back.
Where do the women that you're working with come from in Asia? Is it mostly from Pakistan?
Yeah,
Okay.
mainly Pakistan.
Would you think about going to Pakistan rather than for Nepal?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I didn't think of that because I was this is what I mean, it's recently become a revelation to me that why don't we talk about Pakistan? Like, that's where my grandparents live, my cousins live there, I've got so much family in Pakistan, people come from all over the world to go to Pakistan and climb, and it's never been in my mind. Do you know why? Because the few times I've been to Pakistan, I've sat there in the village, like a good Asian girl, with my scarf wrapped around my head, which is fine, but never having the opportunity to go out and explore, never going, and I said, the next time I go to Pakistan, it will be a fleeting visit, I'll say hi to my family, and then I'm going straight to North Pakistan, and I'm going to explore, and whoever's coming with me, they can come.
Amazing. Yeah.
Similar related question. How do you find or recruit the women for your courses?
Okay, good question. They're all women, and I made sure that this was part of the recruitment process, was all women that have had some direct link to the youth project. So as young people, or so a lot of these people that run the course, and you've got women that are like 20, so they're just like young leaders, that kind of age. Plus, then we've got youth workers, so we've got Firdaus there, she leads, and Saria, they lead our DV. So it was all, I really made a conscious effort to make sure there were people out already from. I mean, if I put it out there to the wider community, guaranteed we would have so many people there. But I thought it's only fair that we take the women that have already had so much, put so much effort into their community. That's what it is. Put an effort into the community and then we give something back to them. That's the kind of thought process behind that.
Well, thanks, Jen. I'm going to keep this moving. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the work at Outbound, creating and developing the Women in Outdoor Leadership course. So I was an instructor at Allswater, senior instructor for about 8 years, and then left to do wilderness therapy, but as I left, this job came up to look at diversity within the organisation. And it was a total surprise to me that I didn't know it was coming, but I thought that's something really exciting that I'd be really passionate about leading on. And I guess thinking back about my own experiences as a woman developing within the industry, I thought I would love to be part of creating something that opened up the outdoors for other women as well. I'm working in an organisation like Outbound, like it's pretty masculine history. You can see from the picture there, and I'm sure a lot of people know the history, like set up in 1941, very much about making men out of boys, like chuck them in the sea and toughen them up. And like I didn't really identify with a lot of that, or that way of being in the outdoors, but I found like a place for myself within Outbound with that real passion for personal development and getting young people into wild places. And I guess through my own journey, I learned that actually, we need everybody leading on that. Everybody has such strengths to bring to young people's personal development. And a lot of that history of Outbound is getting in the way of having a more diverse team for the benefit of young people. So I came up with this idea that we would create a programme specifically for women, and that it would be a 10-week course. It was kind of part of Outbound's wider diversity journey, so we were looking at other areas as well, but this was the specific women's element of it. 10-week course, between training and assessment of core NGBs. It was at the time where there was a bit of questioning about whether there was that drop-off between training and assessment, and the thought that perhaps if we could capture women who were really interested and on that training pathway but who were experiencing barriers, then actually that could be a really significant thing in someone's career. So it involves some technical skills training, psychology of potential and personal development, basically all the stuff I learned in my masters that like made me able to step up and lead. I was like, everybody needs to know this, so I'm going to put this into a course, combined with really inspiring female leaders who had gone on the technical skills journey and were really passionate about that area. So women could learn about themselves and also train in a space where they saw people like them do really hard technical stuff in the outdoors. We also had mentors, and it felt really important to have men as part of the programme mentoring and working as well, because we don't operate in isolation, do we? And also, like Rachel said at the start, men are such an important part of gender equality, and I think the more we can see gender equality as a shared thing that we're all learning about and all going on a journey together, the better we can do that. But women's spaces are such an important part of that as well. And we had a range of inspiring leaders. So some people might recognise Rehna from Black Girls Hike. She came was a guest speaker for us. She was incredible. She brought her mum as well, which was lovely. So some of the challenges that the women face, so we run the course twice, once in 2019 and once in 2021, and both times it was like massively oversubscribed. We had like 30 or 40 applicants for 8 places on the programme, and that in itself was quite interesting, knowing that women wanted this space, but also doing a bit of thematic analysis on what are women saying about the challenges, and there's 3 that stood out at the top. So feeling of not belonging as a leader, or like a lot of self-doubt that was preventing action, not feeling good enough for certain roles, whether that was like more technical roles or stepping into more senior roles or doing qualifications, and then also really significantly lacking peers and female peers and networks to train with. And some of the things people shared that maybe contributed to some of that was like being mistaken as the assistant. She's been next to the 6-foot man and somebody automatically assumes she must be the teacher or you're a trainee. The surprise from participants that you can mess me, you're doing all that with the ropes. And I'm sure these will resonate with the people in the room. They're being deferred to more pastoral roles, like, oh, you go and look after that kid who's crying over there, or, right, we're going to go to the gorge, right, I'll go and set everything up, you talk to the group about, what we're going to do, that sort of thing. Being talked over, so being in situations working with male colleagues where the words will be taken right out of your mouth, or suggestions being ignored, and frequently being in a minority on courses or in the workplace. So some of those might resonate for some people. I think this participant summed it up really, really nicely in saying, it's one of those weird things, like I couldn't necessarily give you such and such a person said this on this day and it made me feel like that. It wasn't like that, it was really nuanced. It was sort of like lots of passing comments and attitudes that are shared and just building this repertoire of I'm not really good enough. And that might resonate for people as well. And I think going back to what I was saying in my introduction, like reflecting on my own journey, I think, if you'd asked me in my late 20s, has being a an impact me, I would have been like, no, probably not. And I would have directed a lot of the things, I would have been like, oh no, like I just procrastinate a bit, or like I'm just a bit lazy, or maybe I'm not confident enough to do that thing. Nothing to do with being a woman. But as I've learned more about this area, I guess I've learned a lot more about the role that sexism has in our own journey and the role of sexism as a form of oppression. So I'll just pull a couple of bits out. This is quite a big, complicated slide. I'll pull a couple of bits out of this that I think are helpful, and we might touch on this, or we'll do more than touch on it, but we'll talk about this more tomorrow in the challenging sexism panel. So there's lots of ways, in lots of inequalities in society the diagrams kind of representing, and sexism obviously is based on our sex or gender, and I think the key thing is it happens at 3 different levels, and the quote I just shared with you, that kind of sense of like, I'm not really sure exactly what it is, can't quite pinpoint it, I know this happens and this happens. So there's those things in between people, the interpersonal, the kind of statements that some people shared on that last slide. But then there's also the institutional, who are we celebrating as role models, who's leading organisations, who's writing the policies, who's making the decisions. And the third one, which I suppose for me, learning about this kind of idea of internalised oppression, how we as women can internalise these ideas of being lesser than, not actually being a leader, or someone like me is not a leader, can have a really, really big impact on how we feel able to show up, how we feel able to develop, the roles that we feel able to take on. And I think this whole picture is just really important in understanding how we move forward. The bit at the bottom here as well, I think it's also key, like oppression at all levels. It can be intentional or unintentional. It can be conscious or unconscious. And I think, like a lot of the things I identified in my own journey, at the time they were just part of the air that I breathed, being told to clean the toilets. Oh yeah, of course, that's just what I do. But over time, they become more conscious, or when I reflected back, they became more conscious, and I could see then how they had an impact on my career. So the course was set up with 3 different focuses in it, and 3 different key bits of leadership. I think I felt really frustrated throughout my career doing technical skills. It was always, doing qualifications. It was always about technical skills. How can you tie the rope? How can you read the map? And I didn't feel like that was my top strength. I had to work quite hard at those things. But what I did have was this really I felt like I was really good with people, and I had this really strong understanding of relationships between people and how you develop as a person. And for me that was missing from all the stuff I'd ever done. So I created this course with a real focus equally on all of those things. Understanding your personal journey, understanding how you relate to others, and understanding the technical elements you need to work in the outdoors. And for me that's good leadership, all of those things. The course was also underpinned by growth mindset, and if you haven't read this book and you're someone who experiences self-doubt or experiences a gap between where you are and where you want to be, read this, it's amazing. And during my masters I did a lot of study around this, and I also did some research within Outward Bound looking at how we can support people to learn about their mindset and the impact their mindset has on their potential and therefore what they're able to achieve. We did some research into the course, and I worked with Linda Allen from Northumbria University, who some people might know, and a nice, lovely wee story about, I suppose, female networks and connectivity. So I met Linda at the first Women in Adventure conference at Glenmore Lodge, and when I was doing my undergrad, I was really curious about why are there not more women in the outdoors? I just didn't really get it. And so I studied that, and I was continually quoting Linda Allen, Linda Allen, Linda Allen, and then I met her at this conference, and I was like, oh, Linda Allen, I'm you. And it turned out she was really interested. She was like, oh, you're doing this course, and we got chatting, and she was like, oh, maybe we could do some research together. So we did, and we published this paper, which it was just amazing to work with somebody that I'd looked up to, and maybe not seen myself doing things like that, but we worked together to do that. Linda interviewed all the women at the end of the course, and there was 3 themes that stood out in terms of what the course did for people. And it was all, unsurprisingly, a lot of it was about confidence, but when we unpicked that, there were 3 big themes. The first was technical ability, so no big surprise there. If you spend 10 weeks in the mountains and on rocks, you're probably going to improve your technical ability. I suppose the second 2 were a bit more interesting. So spending time with women and having female role models really increased the women's sense of self and their understanding of their own personal strengths and their values, and that led to them feeling a lot more able to advocate for themselves, to share their own opinions, to say oh, actually, I'm not too sure about that, I think this, and feel like they had something valid to offer. So that was really interesting. And then the third bit was the most fascinating to me, because I think the third bit definitely encapsulates what for me is accelerated, that's what I'm looking for, accelerated my own personal development journey. So for a long time, I think I spent a lot of time quite scared and trying to fit in and worrying about making mistakes. And what the teaching the growth mindset alongside other women seemed to do for them was open up this ability to be oh, I don't need to be perfect. Oh, I can say if I don't know something. It's okay, it's part of a process. You know, I'm learning, so it's okay. But what a lot of the women described was this need, as a result of being in a male-dominated space, and this sense of like, women have always had to kind of prove that we belong, haven't we? Like really put ourselves out there to be like, we can do this too, if we think about the history. And that feeling of needing to prove yourself leads to limited learning. Because when you're trying to prove yourself, you're not maybe asking questions, you're not putting yourself in stretched situations, you're just constantly trying to show like, I am good enough, I can be here. And so that ability to participate in learning behaviours was really strengthened by the programme. And that led to lots of different decisions. So what contributed to that was a supportive environment, of course, the kind of growth mindset stuff, the whole three, the technical, interpersonal and intrapersonal, and also having female peers. So I'll just briefly say a wee bit about that. I think this one is also something that stood out, really fascinated me. A few of the women were like, I really didn't want to go on a women's course. Like, I thought it would just be all pink and girly, and like, it's going to be dumbed down, like it'll be, you know, maybe it'll be easier, like people think they need to lower the tone for us or something. And what the women found was actually there was a big difference between a supportive environment and an easy environment. And being in an environment where there wasn't that ego, where people felt actually accepted and genuinely understood. And it was about collaboration rather than competition. So it's like, how are we all going to improve? Not who's the best climber, who can climb the hardest here. And being able to ask questions about anything, like there was no stupid questions. And no questions where it was like, oh, you've asked that, oh, you're a bit rubbish. And there was that openness to being vulnerable and sharing how you're feeling as well. This was described in quite a big contrast to a lot of the environments that a lot of the women who came on the course had experienced to date. And what was most interesting was that they talked about this feeling of like, just frees you up to try. Like one lassie described doing her first lead, and she was like, there's no way in any other environment I would have said I want to do my first lead, because I would have been too scared that I would have messed it up, or what to go wrong, or what if I cry? Like, crying was great, but like what if I cry in public, and crying's perceived as weak, whereas actually crying is just a normal human emotion that we all experience. And she described how actually with this space, it not only was it supportive, but it actually allowed her to push much harder and much further than she would have in another space. So get that confusion of female spaces being easy and for women who aren't that confident was something that was fun, but which was good. There was a couple other things that really stood out for the women about the significance of it, and I think again for me, like, this was such big learning. I'd not really been part of many female spaces before developing this course, and probably, if I'm completely honest, it would have been something that I would have been like, I don't know if that's really for me. But getting involved in the event syndicate and experiencing the female-specific mountain biking space and being on courses with just a group of women, was so powerful in ways that I couldn't even expect. And I think the women described it really well. So, some people talked about networks, so not having contact, not meeting many women, not having females to go out with, and actually that being really powerful. That's not everyone's experience, and it's not been mine. I've had quite a lot of women in my life throughout my career, and someone there was describing, pockets of the UK are really different. So I'm sure for all of us that will be quite different. This one was quite interesting, and this is something I definitely found in the biking world. So this person described how, like, it's nice to naturally be the leader, to naturally be the person who's at the front, rather than always be following men up mountains and their 6 foot legs and traipsing at the back. And I think often we conflate speed and strength with leadership ability, when actually it's nothing. Leadership ability and speed and strength are two completely separate things. But we can feel like if we're not the strongest and not the fastest, how on earth can we be the leader? So actually experiencing being competent and not always being at the back was a really powerful thing to feel like, oh yeah, I can do this too, and you can recognise those things in yourself. And then the last one, and again this was so interesting, I think my respect for women has grown. Like, I don't think I didn't respect women before this course, but it's just reinforced like how awesome women are. You can go on these big adventures and be emotional and vulnerable all at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And this idea really, I suppose, made me realise how, as women, we can be a bit sexist in our own minds about women generally and to other women. And by experiencing it being in women-specific environments and experiencing the wholeness of people, people being really technical and out there, and sometimes finding things difficult and having a cry, and actually that's all part of being human, was really powerful. Oh, look at that, that's the end.
Okay, has anybody got any questions for Kate? The wonderful Kate. Amazing.
So I'm quite interested in a slide that you showed in your previous one actually about participation in, you had participation and leaders,
the mountain training.
And you had about you were talking about the number of people that will go through training, and then also who will then go for assessment. You're saying there's quite a big drop off between training and assessment.
Well, apparently there's not so much now. I don't know if anyone in mountain training can say anything on that. That was a historic.
There is still drop off.
There is drop off.
Yeah, so I was thinking, you were saying about...
This one.
Yeah. So, we got that. And one of the quotes you had was that women often, I shouldn't say always, often will have the thought, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not ready, blah, blah, blah. And I wonder if a higher percentage of women that are going for assessment are actually more likely to pass.
Yes.
Than men. So is it more likely men be like, I'll give it a go, I'm feeling confident, I'll have a try, and then maybe aren't up to the skill level, and maybe the women that are taking part are actually over and above the skill level they need to be for that assessment?
Yeah.
Because I would be terrified to go into anything if I didn't feel 120% ready for it. And I know a load of my male sort of counterparts will be like, oh, I'll just wing it and see what happens, and then maybe they're not passing isn't such a knockback.
Yeah.
They probably be like, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
Not good enough.
So what came up in relation to that was the idea of representing all women. So because we've come from a history where women have been excluded from the outdoors and where we've had to fight for our right to participate and our right for equal access to opportunities, there can be this sense of like, well, if I'm a bit shit and just proving to everybody that, well, women can't do it. So women can carry a lot of burden with that, and that can drive that behaviours around perfectionism and around that needing to be 120% ready, whereas men don't really have that. If they mess it up, it's like, well, this doesn't represent my entire...
Yeah, they're not ready for the men.
Oh well, it's just one thing. But yeah, it would be really interesting to, I don't know the stats.
It would be interesting to see it.
And I know Will Hardy did his PhD looking at this within, I don't know, Rachel, if you know anymore.
We've got some reports out in the room.
I think it did describe exactly that.
Yeah.
The majority of women felt they weren't prepared to go for assessment, and therefore were over-prepared and had a higher success rate. In the main of that study. I think that did sort of show through. There's quite a few other interesting things because it also had parts of, the more touch points you had, the more opportunities you had for confirmation and checking in and things like that allowed people allowed all genders to get to assessment a bit quicker, perhaps than what was the norm. And certainly I think there is a drop off between training and assessment, but there was quite a lot of reasons for that as well. So some people do training because they just want to go for training to get the skills to then go out and enjoy it themselves. Not everybody wants to do training to become a leader. But there was definitely, in that study, it's quite worth having a look because quite a lot of those things did come up.
I do remember Will saying there was no correlation between the amount of time it took between training and assessment between the genders.
That's right.
Yeah, it didn't affect it.
Yeah.
Which was really surprising.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Kate?
As a practitioner in the outdoors, what questions do you think
we could ask ourselves to ask if we're creating a supportive environment. Because I'm not sure what to ask myself and to challenge myself how to frame the day to make sure it is as supportive as it can be.
Yeah. Brilliant question. So one of the things that we did at the beginning of the course was an exercise to get the group to think about what that would mean for them, because I think it's it can be different for different people. And we asked two questions as part of that. And so one of them was what would you like from the group for you to feel supported? So you can facilitate that process, I think, and get people to share. And they were a whole range of different things, and quite personal. You know, like someone would say, like, if I'm finding something hard, I just want everybody to be quiet. Like, I don't want people shouting at me. Whereas another person would be like, oh, if I'm finding something hard, like, I would really appreciate it if the group just, give me a few words of encouragement. But the second question we asked, because so much of a positive learning environment is within ourselves as well, is what are you going to give yourself permission to do in order for you to learn? And that was really interesting. So then we got into more conversations around, like, I'm going to give myself permission to cry. If I feel emotional, I'm just going to give myself permission to do that, and that'd be okay. Or I'm going to give myself permission to ask a question if I don't know, because normally I always stay quiet and then just do it afterwards. And so some of those things were happening. I looked at the time. What time is it? Rachel, how are we for time? We've got one more.
Is there one more question?
Yeah, it's not really a question, but the second-hand site from that first call was amazing. With first-hand tablet, every single day of that course, she was messaging like, oh my god, this is great. And I know also like Bex doing it as well, just sending it to her friends, so it wasn't just, oh, I don't know.
8 first year and then 10.
Yeah, it was massive, just doing all the secrets.
Oh, cool, thank you.
Shall we just have a look at that last slide and get into about it? I know we've got Rachel's obviously from the nod.
Maybe that could be a great question.
Yeah.
Here we go. We'll get there. There we go. Yeah, so we thought we would leave you with the thought, because climbing the mountain of gender equality, it's a big mountain to climb. We've made loads of progress, and we can all definitely support each other to continue making progress. I think one of the big things that shifted for me learning about this is thinking, like, what women can I identify as role models in what I'm doing. So when I was doing my level 3, I consciously surrounded myself by really great mountain bike riders and really great mountain bike leaders who are female, and I never ever thought that I needed that or that would be something helpful, and it's so helpful and really, really good. So this just invites you to think about, in whatever journey you're on, who are you looking up to, which women are you looking up to, and could seek support from, whether that's inspiration or whether that's actual, I ran some people up and said, I think you're amazing, can I come riding with you please? and people are really happy to help. But also, who are you a role model for? Because we're all at different places with whatever journey we're on. There's always people ahead of us, and there's always people who are aspiring to do what we're doing. And I really like that way of thinking about women supporting women within the sector. So I'll leave you with that thought, and maybe just find somebody during the break to have a chat and share your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. Yeah. I've just got a few notes from that, just little highlights, things that stood out to me. Someone said, I don't feel like the minority in the room. That's really nice. The rising tide that lifts everybody up. Feeling comfortable gives you confidence. And that we can't define ourselves only by gender, which I think is a really good point from Kate. And we shouldn't conflate speed and strength with leadership. I know that I've always done that. I'm not the only one. Yeah, thanks so much, and I really love this picture because it's sort of gender neutral. So it's break time! Yeah! Until 11:30, so we've only got 20 minutes. After that, we're going straight to workshops, so I'm going to come and clap and set my feet, you all can go off to your workshop at 11:30. Paul, before we go, Laura, Fran, Megan, are you here?
Laura and Megan are just out there. I can grab them if you want.
Oh, Fran, just give us away. There's another manual training. Fran got manual training and they weren't here earlier when I actually. We'll have a chat with them. Yeah, see you at 11:30 for your work.